Your thumb hovers over a name in your phone you swore you'd stop looking at. You don't call, you don't text, you just look, the way you'd look at a photograph of somewhere you used to live. And underneath the looking, something inconvenient and quiet rises up. You miss them. Not the version of them that made you feel small, not the version that kept you waiting, kept you guessing, kept you rehearsing apologies for things that were never your fault. You miss something else. Something you can't quite name. And the fact that you miss it at all makes you feel like you're failing some test everyone else seems to have passed. Here's what almost nobody tells you about this feeling. You're not confused. You're not broken. You're not secretly weak for missing someone who hurt you. You're responding exactly the way a human nervous system is built to respond to something specific, something that has almost nothing to do with love, and almost everything to do with how your brain learns what's worth wanting. Let's start with a question you've probably never asked directly. What exactly do you miss? If you actually sit with that question honestly, the answer is rarely the person's face, or their voice, or even their personality in general. It's usually a moment, a particular night. The way things felt right after a fight ended and they finally pulled you close again. The relief of being chosen again after fearing you wouldn't be. That relief is the part your body is actually asking for. There's a principle in behavioral psychology that explains why this specific kind of relationship can outlast every ounce of logic you throw at it. It comes from research on how reward actually works in the brain, and it has a strange, almost unfair feature built into it. A reward that arrives every single time you expect it barely registers after a while. Your brain adapts, gets used to it, stops paying close attention. But a reward that arrives unpredictably, sometimes present, sometimes withheld, creates a completely different response. The brain doesn't relax into it. It stays alert, hopeful, constantly scanning for the next time the reward might show up. This is the same mechanism behind slot machines, and it's the same mechanism behind a relationship where affection came and went without warning. You weren't chasing the person, you were chasing the unpredictability itself, the exact thing your nervous system is wired to find almost impossible to walk away from. Here's the part that reframes everything. The emotional intensity you remember, the highs that felt like nothing you'd experienced before, weren't proof of a deep connection. They were proof of an unstable one. Calm, secure relationships rarely produce that kind of intensity, because there's nothing to chase, nothing withheld to long for, nothing missing to fill the gap with fantasy. So your body learned, somewhere along the way, to associate that specific ache, that specific hunger, with the word love when it was actually closer to withdrawal. It helps to look at attachment research here because it explains why some people get pulled into this pattern more easily than others. Children who grow up with caregivers, who were warm sometimes, and distant or unpredictable other times, often develop what researchers call an anxious attachment style, where love itself gets quietly wired to uncertainty rather than to safety. For someone with that early wiring, a relationship that runs hot and cold doesn't register as a warning sign. It registers as familiar. The nervous system recognizes the rhythm from somewhere much earlier and mistakes that recognition for compatibility. This is part of why leaving someone unstable can feel more disorienting than leaving someone steady. You're not just losing a person, you're losing a rhythm your body has known, in some form, for most of your life. There's a term for the deeper version of this. Trauma bonding. It describes what happens when moments of harm and moments of comfort come from the exact same source, close together, over and over, until your nervous system stops being able to separate them cleanly. The same person who caused the pain becomes the only one who can seem to soothe it. So leaving doesn't just mean losing someone who hurt you. It means losing the one source your body learned to associate with relief from that hurt, even though they were also the cause of it in the first place. That's not a character flaw. That's conditioning, built slowly without your permission, out of repetition you didn't choose. There's a well-known finding in memory research that makes all of this even harder to untangle. Our memory isn't a neutral recording device. It's selective, and it tends to preserve the emotional peaks of an experience far more vividly than the long, difficult middle. So months after something ends, your memory quietly edits the story. The good night gets sharper. The 3 miserable weeks around it gets softer, blurrier, easier to explain away. This isn't dishonesty. It's simply how memory is built. But it means the version of the relationship you're mourning was never the full relationship. It's a highlight reel. Your own mind assembled, missing most of the footage that made you want to leave in the first place. There's a name for this specific distortion. Researchers call it fading affect bias, the tendency for the emotional sting of negative memories to fade faster over time than the warmth of positive ones. It's usually a healthy feature of memory, one that lets people move forward after ordinary disappointments. But applied to an unstable relationship, it quietly rewrites the story in the wrong direction, softening exactly the parts you most needed to remember clearly. So if you find yourself, months later, struggling to recall why you actually left, that's not evidence you made a mistake. That's evidence your memory is doing what memory always does, and it needs some deliberate correction, not blind trust. Here's the quieter truth sitting underneath all of this. You don't always miss the person. Sometimes you miss the emotional world you built around them. The anticipation. The highs after the lows. The specific way your senses sharpened whenever they walked into a room. The way ordinary days became charged just by being near them. That world was intense, and intensity feels like meaning, even when the meaning was mostly manufactured by instability. And losing an entire emotional world, even a damaging one, still registers as loss. Your body doesn't grade the relationship on whether it was good for you before deciding whether to grieve it. This is why moving on so rarely works the way people expect. Most advice tells you to forget them, distract yourself, fill the time. But you're not actually fighting a memory of a person. You're recovering from an unpredictable reward system that your nervous system got attached to, the same way it might get attached to any unreliable, high-stakes source of relief. Recovery from that looks different than simple forgetting. It looks like slowly teaching your nervous system that calm, consistent things can also feel meaningful, even though they don't produce the same dramatic highs. It looks like noticing, every time the ache for them shows up, that you can name what's underneath it. Not affection, anticipation, not love, withdrawal, not missing a person exactly, but missing the particular chemical rhythm they came to represent. Naming it doesn't erase the ache instantly, but it changes what the ache means. It stops being proof that you made a mistake by leaving and starts being evidence that your body is simply recalibrating, the way any system recalibrates after losing its main source of unpredictable reward. That recalibration takes longer than anyone wants it to take. There's no shortcut through it, only through it. But on the other side of it is something worth knowing about now, before you're there. The ache you feel today for someone who hurt you is not a sign that you should go back. It's a sign that your nervous system hasn't finished learning what safety actually feels like yet, because safety at first tends to feel like nothing much is happening at all. Maybe you were never actually missing them. Maybe you were missing the specific, unreliable version of aliveness they taught your body to expect, and grieving that it doesn't come as easily from anywhere calm.